In a survival situation or perhaps post-natural disaster, finding a reliable, clean, and safe source of drinking water should be your #1 priority. And so that's what we're doing today. Behind me here, I've got a swamp. Now there's beaver that live in here, there's raccoons around the edges, there's otter, there's all kinds of fish and other wildlife that live in this. Additionally, there's cattle that live in the pastures around this swamp. Now I recently had this water tested and I know that it tests positive for E. coli. Definitely not something that I want to drink out of if I have any other options. And so that's what we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna show you how to take this nasty bog water and turn it into crystal clear, great tasting drinking water with basically nothing but a shovel and maybe a bucket if you have one. If you don't have one, I'll show you how to do that too. If someone doesn't have the knowledge to take contaminated water and make it clean and safe to drink, in a desperate situation, they might be led to drink from something like this. But the odds are very, very good that they would get sick. That would lead to diarrhea, dehydration, and potentially death. Every single year, thousands and thousands of people die from this very thing. So what we're gonna do today is dig 2 different gypsy wells, seep basin, coyote wells, whatever you wanna call them. It's basically just a hole in the ground for water to seep into. Now we're gonna build one that is lined with just a standard 5-gallon plastic bucket, and then I'm gonna do another one that has no lining, no additional work other than just a hole in the ground. We're gonna test both of these and see if there's any E. coli present in the samples once the water filters back in. A little while back, I did a video titled, "This Actually Works, Primitive Water Filter Hack." That video got a lot of views and a lot of comments, and it also got a lot of criticism because I didn't back up my claims with any kind of scientific proof or lab analysis. In this video, we're gonna kind of recreate that with some slight modifications, and then we're gonna take samples and send them off to a lab to get them tested for E. coli. So I've got a few holes drilled in the bottom of this bucket just to allow the water to seep in from the bottom. When I put this bucket into the hole, ideally I want at least a couple of inches sticking out above the ground surface. This is gonna help keep little frogs and mice and other little creepy crawlies out of our water, and it's also gonna help keep surface flow from entering our bucket if we happen to get a big rain. Next, I'm gonna take some of the sand that came out of our hole and just kind of pack it around the bucket. Again, this is just gonna help keep any kind of surface flow from hitting the edge of the bucket and seeping down to the bottom and entering the bottom of the bucket. So I don't have the lid for this bucket, so I'm just gonna throw a heavy folded up piece of canvas on there. That should keep everything out. And we'll come back tomorrow and this thing should be at least have a few inches of water in there. The water level is probably, I'm gonna guess from right here to this bucket, it's maybe about that high up the bucket. So we should have at least that much water in there by tomorrow. All right, so it's been about 24 hours. We're gonna go ahead and open these wells up and see what we got. Hey, little guy, come here. You're not so good for the water quality sample. So little guys like this is one of the reasons that you always want to cover your well. Especially at night, little mice and frogs and snakes and all sorts of things come out. And with the steep walls on your well, even like this one didn't have any kind of lining, he was not able to get out. Even with his little sticky feet, he can climb up just about anything, but he wasn't able to climb up the walls of this this hole here. So make sure you cover your well. You don't want this in your water, obviously. You know, he's probably not gonna cause any harm if he's in there swimming around, but if he dies and then starts to rot, that's probably not gonna be something that you want in your water. And we don't want him to die anyway. He's a cute little fella. All right, little fella. Bump, bump, bump. I think he sees himself in the lens. We'll go turn him loose on a leaf somewhere and let him go on his way. It's a beautiful little thing. There you go, buddy. Get on that. So the first draw that you get out of these hand dug wells like this is always going to be turbid like this. And that's just because there's all kinds of silts and fine particulates that have been stirred up from the digging process. And so what you're gonna wanna do is de-water this thing. Just take all of the water out, throw it away, and let it seep in again. And you're gonna wanna do that 2, maybe 3 times. Do it as many times as you need to for that water to start becoming clear. And every time that you de-water this thing, and it fills back up, it's gonna get more and more clear. So we'll throw that out, we'll just scoop all the water out of here, let it fill back up, and we'll just keep doing that until we get crystal clear water. All right, got all the water out. We'll just go ahead and cover it back up. Come back in a little bit, see what it looks like. So we'll just do the same thing on this unlined well. I'm gonna be more careful getting the water out of here because I don't want to stir up. Oh, there's another frog. Looks like a one that just came out of the tadpole stage. Still got a little tail there. This is probably a bullfrog or a leopard. Probably a leopard frog, actually. Somebody out there could tell us. Not a tree frog though. Oh, there he goes. I'm gonna be more careful getting the water out of here because I don't want to stir up any silt that is just kind of already settled to the bottom or adhered to the edges. But you can see, you know, it's pretty cloudy, but it'll clear. The more we take water out of here, the clearer it'll get. Now, if you have access to gravel, you could put gravel in the bottom of this and that would help tremendously with the silt that you're gonna get. Well, let's see what we've got here. So the water in this bucket looks fantastic. There's a little bit of debris on the top, just a slight skim of maybe some sort of dust. But other than that, the water looks great. I think once we get down below that surface skim, we're gonna have really nice clear water. So I've purged this bucket out just one time, and when it refilled, this water looks crystal clear. We'll go ahead and draw a sample from the unlined well too. So again, I'm gonna get below the surface before I take my sample. So when you're looking down in the hole here, this water doesn't look great, but that's just because you're looking and you're seeing nothing but dirt and mud and stuff around there. But when you actually draw a sample out of it, this stuff is crystal clear. That doesn't look like there's anything wrong with this water. So we've got good samples out of both of our wells, the one that is lined with the bucket and then just a straight up hole in the ground. We're gonna send both of these off to the lab and see what we get back. All right guys, so it's been a couple days and we've got the lab results back. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put those up on the screen so you can take a look at them with me. So on the far left-hand side, you'll see our two samples from the bucket and the one from the ground. The next column over is the E. coli results, and if you look at the bucket sample, it says less than 2, which I'm going to explain that a little bit further here in just a second. And the sample from the ground said less than 1, which is undetected. So there was no detected E. coli in either one of these samples. The reason that the E. coli results for the bucket sample says less than 2 is because they split the sample and ran 2 tests on it. Now I'm unclear on why exactly they did that. I suspect that when I told the lab tech what I was doing, she couldn't believe the results, and so she ran an additional test, which also came back negative. Now keep in mind that this test is only testing for E. coli. Now E. coli did not show up in our samples from our wells, but it did show up in the sample that I drew previously from the swamp. The lab did mention that there were coliforms present in the samples. This makes perfect sense because coliforms are literally everywhere. They're on our skin, they're in the soil, and we're ingesting them all the time. The reason we don't get sick is because only a very small group of those are harmful to humans. Hence the test focusing primarily on E. coli, which again, there's a lot of different E. colis. Many of them are not harmful, but it's my understanding that they are much more likely to be harmful than humans than just any old coliform. If I'm incorrect on that, please let me know. If you want to take this one step farther, you can of course boil the water, and then you'll be 100% certain that there's nothing harmful in this as far as biological contaminants. Or you could go the UV route and simply place this water in a clear container and place it in direct sunlight for a minimum of 6 hours. The UV light present in sunlight is a very, very good disinfectant. If you want more information on this, just Google solar water disinfectant and you'll come up with a whole bunch of stuff. The bucket by itself did really good, but there are some improvements you could make to this if you're going to be using this for your long-term source of water. One of the things that I think would be a big benefit is to make up a bunch of charcoal, crush that down, put a layer of charcoal in the bottom, and then a layer of sand and gravel on top of that. That's going to help keep down any sediments, and it may also help cut down on any of those coliforms that are coming from the soil and getting into your water. If you're in more of a primitive situation, you don't have a bucket, you can line these wells with things like tree bark, branches that are close together, you can put gravel in the bottom, and if you want to get real fancy, you could even put charcoal and then gravel on top of the charcoal. All right, for the ultimate test. Do this in one shot so nobody calls BS on it. Smells good. Tastes like bottled water. Well, tastes good to me. If I don't make a post next week, you'll know that this was all BS. Alright guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something and enjoyed it. I am going to test out a few more different types of low-tech primitive water filters, again with lab analysis and all that fun stuff. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and hit that subscribe, and we'll hopefully see you next week.